let us move on to the second content block. So this is now looking at our Area Study 2, Unit 4. And if we have a quick read, on the completion of this unit, the student should be able to discuss the importance of effective management, strategies and leadership in change, evaluate the effectiveness of a variety of strategies used by managers to implement change, and discuss the effect on change on stakeholders of a business. And so give everyone maybe a couple of seconds just to read over the key knowledge points. Okay, let's have a look. So, leadership during change. So, leadership is all about the ability to influence and motivate individuals to achieve business objectives. So, as we know, change can be a very difficult process for a lot of people, for many stakeholders, because you are moving from a current state to a new and unfamiliar state. And so, in order to mitigate these challenges, leadership is important to help and support stakeholders and people within the business through this transition. And so, specifically during change, leadership can really help to build momentum towards successful change, to help reduce resistance to change. So, by making people feel supported, by offering support, by offering help, it allows people to feel more comfortable and maybe be more inviting towards change, therefore reducing resistance, and even direct the business and its stakeholders towards the same goals. So, sort of aligning the goals of stakeholders and businesses so that they're achieving the same thing and therefore, enhancing business outcomes as well. Looking at a leader more closely, so the workings of an effective leader. So, a leader is someone who is, inspiring and motivating through encouragement, support, and recognition. So it's not like they're autocratic, they're not telling people what to do. It's rather they're fostering an encouraging environment, making everyone feel supported and recognized, and having that vision to make correct decisions. So it's also just about whatever decisions that the leader makes, it's sort of them reflecting, or whatever decisions that are made for, to achieve a particular vision. So, those decisions will help or support or facilitate the achievement of a vision. And so, yeah, it kind of links to having emotional intelligence as well. So, sort of understanding others in the business, having the emotional capability and skills to recognize how other people are feeling. And I guess that also links with, supporting and recognizing and encouraging those within the business. So all of these skills sort of work together, I would say. But yeah, there are key workings of an effective leader. So in essence, it's just someone who inspires others to follow in their lead. So it's someone that people will look up to in the business and sort of aspire to become like. So, what are some important roles of a leader during change management? So, a key one is communicating the need for change. So, by doing so, they're able to build the momentum and to even support firsthand if people are, uncertain or have any, uncertainties or clarifications, all of that. It's also about empowering employees in order to develop a shared vision of change, increasing ownership of and commitment to the change. So, by empowering employees, they are, putting employees in a position where they feel greater responsibility and more ownership, and that will allow them to be a lot more committed if they feel like they're directly involved in particular change. It's also about being transparent and honestly communicating details of the change, reducing the fear of the unknown. So they shouldn't be misleading in any sense, just because if they mislead their employees and then when the change occurs and then employees are like, okay, I wasn't notified of this, I didn't know that my job, responsibilities would change, they're going to feel betrayed, there's going to be a loss of trust, there's going to be an impact on the relationship that they have with management and the business. And so in that sense, it can be a little bit dissettling and unsettling for that employee. It's really important that the leader is transparent and they're, honestly communicating details of the change, just so that they're able to adequately support the employee, but also so that employee knows how the change will affect them as well. Then it's about using interpersonal skills to empathize with employees and other stakeholders, also reducing their stress and resistance. So I guess a lot of it kind of links to what we were looking at before in terms of having that emotional intelligence, being very empowering, recognizing and supporting, but just taking those things and being a bit more specific, I would say, is what this slide is doing. And even though these are general ways of wording how a leader is important during change management, whenever you are given a question in the case study, in your exam or SAC, it's really important that you are specific to the case study. So read the case study, see if there's any specific examples of, that shows why a leader is important during change. Highlight that so that you remember to talk about that. Really important things. Okay, now looking at strategies to respond to KPIs. So Vika wants us to know these management strategies when looking at KPIs. And so, again, they have been listed explicitly in the study design, so you can't get away with knowing a couple of them. It's important that you do make the effort to have a solid understanding for all of them. So we have staff training, staff motivation, change of management styles or management skills, increased investment in technology, improving quality and production, cost cutting, initiating lean production techniques, innovation, global sourcing of inputs, overseas manufacturing, and also global outsourcing. And again, a bit of a reminder, these are the 10 KPIs that we are required to know. So in terms of this dot point, these are all strategies that a business can use to respond to KPIs. So if a business identifies that, okay, my net profit figures are significantly low, what the business can use one of these strategies to address their net profit figures, for example. So they might use cost cutting as an example to address that KPI. So that's sort of how these two things are related. But we'll go through all of these strategies and look at how they're relevant to KPIs. So staff training is all about, actually it's fairly straightforward, but it's all about, training your staff, ensuring that the business provides opportunities for staff to be upskilled and to increase their knowledge so that they're able to complete their jobs and duties to a higher standard. And so in staff training and how it's relevant to KPIs, you could kind of link it to pretty much all of them. So you could talk about staff absenteeism, turnover, rate of productivity growth, number of workplace accidents, number of customer complaints. Before I go into this screen, I actually want you guys to have a bit of a think about how they're related. So even if you have a pen and paper next to you, write down all of these KPIs that I have on the screen and kind of tell me how they're linked, or briefly think about how staff training could be used to respond to staff absenteeism, or what's the link between the KPIs. Give everyone a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, let's have a look. So in terms of staff absenteeism and turnover, so employees who are trained, they're going to feel valued and appreciated by the business, which means that they might feel obliged, or they're more likely to stay inside or stay inside within the business, and that helps to increase the motivation. So that would subsequently reduce absenteeism and turnover. Also, rate of productivity growth, because trained, motivated employees are productive. They're going to achieve better business outcomes, make the business more productive. If employees are trained, they're less likely to be responsible for workplace accidents. And then if employees are well trained, they know what they're doing, they're going to make less mistakes, and that might reduce the number of customer complaints from customers. Staff motivation. Again, going to give everyone a couple of seconds just to have a think about how we could link staff motivation to these KPIs. But just thinking about, when staff are motivated, that means that they have that inherent desire to, work and to achieve a particular outcome. Okay, let's have a look. So with this one, if employees are motivated, they're going to be less likely to leave the business or to not come to work or to not arrive at work. Yeah, so they're less likely to show up for scheduled work, less likely to leave the business. They're more likely to come up to strict scheduled work and to stay inside the business, which means that their absenteeism and turnover is going to reduce. Motivated employees are productive, meaning that businesses are also going to be productive. They're going to have the desire to actually do well. Ways to motivate staff. So the business could, have recognition and rewards. So make employees feel more recognized. Use the systematic appraisal system, maybe performance-related pay. Setting interesting and challenging work, to provide that element of stimulation to staff. Maybe even implement policies that help make the workplace feel like a safer place. Okay, again, same thing for a change of management styles and management skills. Have a look at this. Okay, so your choice of management style depends on the nature of tasks, time available, experience of employees, and management preference. So this was all from Area Study 1 and Unit 3. And so what your KPIs indicate you need more or less of, that would depend on your choice of management style. In terms of if a business has high staff turnover, that means they need to motivate their employees. And so that's when a participative or consultative management style could be used. Even like delegation to empower employees or communication to get their feedback in terms of management skills could also be implemented. And in terms of productivity growth, again, motivation is really important. So delegation, participative or consultative management, putting greater focus on planning and decision making would also be very important as well. In terms of technology, so increase investment in technology. So we have productivity growth. So technology, as we know, is a lot more fast, it's efficient, it's effective. So we're going to improve our efficiency and productivity. It's going to help us increase the number of sales and percentage of market share because it allows greater accessibility through websites, for example. And so that means customers are able to access a website from anywhere, regardless of their geographical location, anytime. That's going to help increase sales. Also, improved efficiency. There's more to sell from equal/less inputs. greater sales, greater market share. Level of wastage, so greater efficiency, technology saves on time, and so there's less waste. Number of customer complaints, since it's a lot more accurate, there's less mistakes being made, which means that customers are less likely to get defects or be satisfied with their products. Number of workplace accidents, so we could say that dangerous tasks could be replaced by robots, and that might result in less injuries. All right, improving quality in production. So this also appeals to a variety of KPIs. Improving quality will help to increase customer satisfaction, which might mean that sales are going to increase and therefore a greater percentage of market share. It will also help to reduce customer complaints since they're getting a higher quality product, and decrease waste as well, because high wastage can be a sign of low quality production. Strategies to implement quality are your quality management strategies. So what we looked at before, the 3 ones, TQM, quality assurance, and quality control. But then you can also think about other ones such as lean management, and then also training of managers and employees. So for example, with lean management, you can think about 0 defects. That's about achieving perfection in production. But yeah, that are some examples. Then we have cost cutting. So cost cutting is just all about reducing expenses. If we reduce our expenses, if we cut our costs, it increases our profit. And so these are some major cost cutting strategies that a business could implement. So lowering salary costs, outsourcing, overseas manufacturing, replacing labor with technological developments. These are just some examples, but I think you could think of a lot more. Reducing wastage as well, lean management, and even buying from cheaper suppliers and using a lot more green energy and lowering energy costs. So using maybe solar panels, renewable energy sources, that would be good examples as well. Then we have our lean production techniques. So lean management is an approach that aims to maximize value while decreasing waste. So maximizing value is all about if the customer, it's surrounding the idea that if a customer finds a product of suitable value, they won't be complaining about it because it achieves their quality expectations, and an increase in the value will help to increase customer satisfaction. Again, more sales, more market share, more profit. Decreasing waste is important because waste is very costly, it's unproductive, and so this is good for profit and productivity if you decrease it, and will also help, reduce the level of wastage. Then we have redeployment of resources, natural, labor, and capital. There are 3 resources that can be deployed. We have natural, and that looks at using existing resources for different purposes. So reduction in waste due to a more efficient and effective use of natural resources. Then we have labor, moving employees to different places within the business. So you might take employees from the marketing department to the finance department, for example, and it keeps knowledgeable staff while reducing turnover. So maybe it keeps things interesting because now they're doing something that they don't normally do. It might help to increase their motivation by giving them an element of challenge. Then we have capital, so machinery and buildings. This is moving production overseas, for example, to take advantage of cheap labor. So you're now looking at bigger scale things with capital. Okay, then we have innovation. Innovation is the introduction of or modification of processes, products, or ideas with the intention of increasing the likelihood of business success. So very, very, very similar to what we just looked at in Porter's generic strategies in terms of differentiation. So it's just about being unique and introducing unique ways of doing things, products, services, whatever it might be. So effective and unique innovation can have significant impacts if customers like the way the business has used innovation. For example, through product differentiation or branding, they're more likely to be loyal to their business, and that will help to improve, the KPIs of profit. It's going to mean that the business is more successful, their market share reduces customer complaints, productivity growth, even number of website hits. Maybe business customers are buying from the website directly, so they're engaging with that a lot more. Okay, global sourcing of inputs. So global sourcing of inputs is when a business imports the resources they require for the production process from an overseas or non-Australian organization. You would have remembered this from, I think, the last area of study we looked at. Area 33. But the advantage of this is that it allows the business to take advantage of cheaper input costs from some countries, accessing skills and resources that might not be available domestically, or even learn how to do business in another market. The disadvantage is that arrival of goods to Australia take a lot more time. So obviously now there's the geographical distance, so it's going to take a lot more time since it's further away from Australia. It's also difficult to return, a lot more costly due to taxes, laws, currency conversions. It can also be hard to monitor the behavior of suppliers and ensure that they're operating in an ethical manner. And if they don't operate in an ethical manner, that's going to damage the business's reputation. There's also a loss of control and a loss of Australian jobs as well. Then we have overseas manufacturing. This is when the entire production process occurs overseas and outside of Australia. And the advantages and disadvantages are fairly similar. So it will allow the business to take advantage of cheaper labor costs in some countries, allow them to access greater expertise or economies of scales in some countries, and also just like it's a good opportunity for them to learn how to do business in another market. The disadvantages, however, is that there can be a lot of hidden costs, taxes, laws, currency conversions, and again, loss of control, loss of Australian jobs, and it can be a lot more difficult to operate or to monitor how those producers are operating. So are they, using sweatshops? Are they treating their workers appropriately? Do they have, sufficient or adequate working conditions? That business will never know because they can't monitor that. So there's that loss of control. And then we have global outsourcing. This is when a business uses other organizations from outside of Australia to undertake non-production related business functions. So it's really important that you understand that it's non-production related. So it's just a non-core business function. So these are just some examples. It could be telecommunication, could be marketing, it could be website development, it could be information technology, accounting, and the advantages and disadvantages of these is that with labor costs, so if a country outsources its marketing, for example, that might help them to save on the labor costs because maybe in that country the minimum wage is a lot lower than Australia. Some countries have expertise in certain fields, so a lot of businesses outsource like software development to India just because India has a lot of expertise and a lot of employees and people within the country that hold a lot of knowledge in like software development and information technology. And so, yeah. Businesses can also focus on its core activities. So by outsourcing its non-core activities, it allows them to focus more so on the core activities. Disadvantages is that it's difficult to ensure ethical behavior of these businesses. There's again a loss of Australian jobs and a loss of control as well. And loss of intellectual property. Okay, now we have Cengage Learning Organization. All right, so with Cengage Learning Organization, this proposes that businesses are flexible, they're adaptive and productive during periods of change. And so these businesses that are flexible, adaptive, and productive will be a lot more successful in implementing change. And so with Cengage Learning Organization, it operates on 5 key principles. That is personal mastery, building a shared vision, team learning, systems thinking, and mental models. So these are the 5 key disciplines that this theory kind of builds upon and looks at. So when understanding these disciplines, mental models is all about the deeply ingrained assumptions that influence one's understanding of the world. So it's sort of like, employees should challenge old assumptions to generate new ideas. So it's just about kind of challenging traditional, deeply ingrained assumptions that, influence your perception and your understanding of the world. And so that should be challenged in order to generate new ideas, in order to, move to a new state and to, facilitate greater thinking. Personal mastery. So this is when an individual should be committed to self-improvement. It's all about self-improvement, continuously learning from self-reflection. And by doing that, you're able to learn faster. So as the name suggests, it's just becoming a master over your skills. So the way that you're able to achieve that is through, having that commitment to improve yourself and also having, that constant self-reflection. Then we have building shared vision. So this is where a business with a shared vision is one that has aligned all people within the business towards the same goals. So it's just the idea that a shared vision is one where everyone within that business is achieving or is aligned to achieve, the same goal. And so if everyone in the business is achieving that same goal, you have that shared vision. You could even think about in your own life with school and how, maybe if there was a group project, you have the same goal of, maybe your goal is to, conduct a very good team presentation, and everyone in the group, wants to get really good results. And so in that way, since everyone has the same goal, you're building that shared vision because everyone maybe wants to get an 80% or like a 90%. And so there's that shared vision that's being created. And then we have team learning. So this is the process which a team's capacity to create desired results is developed, creating an environment where knowledge is shared, build upon personal mastery and shared vision. So you can kind of think of team learning as a combination of personal mastery and building a shared vision, because it really is. It's about that holistic setting where everyone is involved and committed to become better. So it's kind of just like personal mastery in like a group setting. Team's capacity to get those desired results, have that shared vision, build, be better, do better, all of that. And then systems thinking is basically the overarching discipline that links to all of those other disciplines. So it's just the idea of viewing the business as a very whole, complex system, a very holistic perception of the business, rather than a breakdown of its separate parts. So rather than seeing a business through its, finance department, its marketing department, its customer service department, its frontline workers, all of that, you kind of just see it as a holistic, interrelated, complex system, and how each part of the business relates to another section of the business. So just seeing it as one, basically. All right, let's have a look at a practice question. I'll let you guys have a go at this. So outline how a business might use Cengage Learning Organization to successfully implement business change. So this is worth 6 marks. So give everyone a couple of minutes to have a go at this. Okay, I'm gonna start going through this question just because I am wary of time, but hopefully you had the chance to at least plan out or to have a think about how you would tackle this question. In terms of how the marking is broken down, you're going to get 1 mark for your definition or explanation of the theory and how it contributes to successful business change. 5 marks will then be allocated towards you briefly outlining each of the 5 disciplines of the theory. So this is an example. I'm not going to read it extensively. The slides are available to you. So once you have maybe fully attempted the answer, you could always go back and read this sample response to have a look at, what a good response looks like. Okay, let's have a look at the next theory. So we then have Lewin's 3-step change model. This is a theory that outlines the steps a business should take when implementing changes to its business practices so that change is long lasting. So now we're actually looking at how a business can actually implement change into the business to ensure that it is successfully implemented. And so it has 3 steps, and those are unfreeze, movement, and refreeze. Unfreeze is the first step in this model, and it refers to the preparation undertaken by the business prior to implementing the change. And so a business that is unfreezing will follow the following process. It will first determine what needs to be changed, then ensure that there's some sort of support from higher management, from senior management, and then once that's achieved, then actually create the need for change through communication to stakeholders. And by communicating that need for change to stakeholders, in some way, shape, or form, there is going to be a bit of resistance, but that allows the business to actually address and minimize concerns and resistance. So even if there are some concerns, they are able to tackle that beforehand, make sure that it's addressed, and sort of seek to minimize that. And this all occurs in anticipation of the change. It allows to foster that anticipation of change to occur. And then we have movement. So movement is the actual implementation of the change and the transition from old business practices to new ones. So now we're actually transitioning from the business's old ways to the change itself and to the new ones. And this is definitely the stage where the business will get a lot of resistance. It's a period of confusion and fear. And to reduce that, the business could provide support and training, be open and honest in its communication, and also even empower its staff to make them feel included and to make them feel supported. And then lastly, the last step is refreezing. This is the consolidation of changes into the business's culture to ensure that the change is implemented into the long-term future. And so it just looks at creating a sense of stability with the new changes so that old practices aren't reverted back to. But this stage just looks at ensuring that whatever changes being implemented is long-lasting and will last into the long-term future. So it's all about embedding the changes into the corporate culture, and the strategies that a business can take to refreeze is by celebrating success, by recognizing positive employee behavior, things like that. Okay, then we have how a business could actually overcome employee resistance. So to reduce employee resistance to change, they can use either low risk or high risk strategies. And so a low risk strategies we have 4 low risk strategies, which are communication, support, incentives, and empowerment. High risk strategies are manipulation and threat. So for example, suppose your teacher wants you to change your BizMan classes so that they're more collaborative. Collaborating and hearing everyone's insight is a great way of increasing your understanding. It is an additional tool that has a proven record of success. So that would link to communication because, it's all about communicating how, hearing other people's insights and using them to increase your understanding. And if they say, I'll help you guys ensure that there is thorough and productive discussion. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. So that would be an example of them supporting you in doing that because, they're providing that verbal support and they are saying that if you have any issues, if you if you have any issues, if you have any difficulties, they'll be there to support you. But then if they say collaboration is the only way you can boost your marks in BizMan, so if you don't want to participate, it's your funeral. So that's manipulation, because they're kind of manipulating you to do something that by hanging something over your head. So yeah, that's an example of manipulation. If they say each group member can brainstorm one practice question for you to work on collaboratively, that's empowerment. So kind of just looking at how the business can empower individuals, maybe giving them extra responsibility, giving them a bit more work, making them a bit more involved in the change itself. That would be empowerment. If they say, I hear you complain, I'll ban you from future BizMan classes, that's threat. So again, a direct consequence if you do not, I guess, abide by that behavior. Whichever group shows the most improvement in the BizMan SAC will get a free lunch. So that's incentives, because if you do this, you get X. That's all about incentives. So in terms of low strategies, this generates employee commitment, not just compliance. So the idea of commitment versus compliance is really important, because low risk strategies, because they are looking at more so building the relationship, there's a lot more commitment that's generated from employees. And so it's going to contribute to a strong positive corporate culture with reduced hostility and also long-term motivation from employees as well. However, every employee is different within a business, and so that simply might not be enough to motivate some employees. So there's always that element as well. Then we have high-risk strategies. These are highly effective because you get quick and immediate results and behavioral changes. However, constant and regular use of high-risk strategies is not sustainable because it develops a hostile and bitter culture, and there's also potential legal problems. If you're constantly being threatened at work, staff are gonna, raise ethical concerns, and they might even, provide formal complaints, which could end up in lawsuits for the business. It also generates employee compliance, not commitment. So compliance just means that they're going to be motivated in the short term. They're just going to be complying in the short term, but they're not going to be committed in the long term. Okay, last run, I believe. So this is, now we're looking at change and how it's going to impact our stakeholders. So Vico wants us to know how change at a business affects these 5 stakeholders. We can break them down by concern regarding the change and the positive and negative impacts of change as well. So we'll underline what these stakeholders are concerned by the change, or like what their concern is with change, and then also how it might positively and negatively impact them. So with managers, their key concern is going to be around uncertainty regarding changes in their roles/jobs and authority and high stress levels. And so ways that they might be positively impacted by change is they might be recognized for effort. There might be a reevaluation and development of new management styles or skills and new opportunities. Just keep in mind, when I go through the positive and negative impacts of change, these are not ones, I feel like it will definitely, when you have a specific change, and in the context of a SAC or exam, when you're presented with a specific change, and if you're asked to describe how stakeholders might be affected by the change, it can be a lot more different. So these are just generic ones that tend to be fitting for most kinds of change, but just keep in mind that you definitely need to keep in mind what the change is, and that should shape how that stakeholder is positively or negatively impacted. In terms of how managers might be negatively impacted by change, so they might have reduced responsibilities, there might be a rocky transition, maybe it wasn't carried out appropriately, there might be some resentment, distrust, and also high stress. Then we have employees, and so their uncertainty would be changes to job tasks. Does it mean that they have more or less job responsibilities? Their job security, will they lose their job? Required skills, training, and hours/place of work. Potential positive impacts of the change, so more exciting work, Maybe there's going to be removal of unsafe and repetitive tasks, new positions, promotion opportunities, better conditions. Potential negative impacts of the change is that there might be some form of redundancy. They might lose their job, loss of job, and loss of income. Stress and fear that requires support and counseling. So you can see that there's a lot of mental impacts that employees are subjected to potentially. Then we have our customers. So with customers, the concern with them is that the business's product or service will become inaccessible to the customer or will no longer suit their requirements. So if the change maybe is increasing quality or changing the features of a product, then that brings the concern of customers, because if they're using a product and it works for them, they're happy with it, and if the business suddenly changes it, they're going to be concerned about that because it might not suit their requirements. And so the potential positive impacts of change in customers is that maybe they're being given greater quality products. Maybe they're also, there's lower prices. They're having to spend less to buy what they usually buy. Customers are attracted to CSR-based changes. So maybe it's the business, introducing some social responsibility considerations. And so customers are going to feel a lot more good about the purchase when they buy from that business. The potential negative impacts and change, however, on customers is that quality has been sacrificed for price. So if there has been a reduction of price, maybe quality has also decreased, but it could also work the other way. So if quality has increased, then price might also have increased as well. Customers are unable to purchase the product. So it could also be the situation of discontinuation. I know in a lot of instances, there is the chance of products being discontinued. Maybe it's a menu item that you really like, but now it's being discontinued and customers are no longer able to purchase it. Then we have suppliers. So suppliers, their concern is that the change might result in a decline or loss of relationship between the business and the supplier. Positive impacts, suppliers might experience an increase in demand, which means that they'll have assurance that they will constantly supply to the business if the business is successful, and so that's going to help with their own success and growth. And then potential negative impacts is that if the change has been poorly executed, the supplier might feel vulnerable and fearful. Maybe the business has not been successful and suppliers are now scared that they're not going to be paid. If just in time, orders might be more spontaneous, so it requires a lot of responsibility on the suppliers to keep up to date with when orders are coming in. If the change is developing an economy of scale, increased pressure on supplier to confirm the business's demand. So sort of keeping up with the business's demand, might put a bit of pressure on them. Okay, then we have the general community. So general community, they're concerned with if the change will cause negative environmental impacts or negative job impacts. Positive impacts of change, so if the change is more successful, business is more successful, the likely chance that the business will employ more people. So if the business is more successful, maybe they're getting more jobs, they're growing. Successful business also means more tax. So that means more tax paid to the government, which can be reinvested into the community, build stronger infrastructure, education, healthcare, social recreational centers. And change could even be CSR, it could be social responsibility. So maybe that the business is directly positively impacting the community. The negative impacts of change, so redundancy means that there's going to be lower employment, there's going to be reduced employment, and so loss of jobs. Change might also involve socially irresponsible behavior, increased waste, outsourcing, sweatshops. So that's quite negative. Okay, CSR is the commitment by and corporate social responsibility is a commitment by an organization to conduct its businesses in an ethical manner that exceeds legal requirements and aims to minimize negative impact on the environment, society, and the economy, as well as other stakeholders. So fairly, you hopefully should have seen this definition before. So CSR is all about going above and beyond legal requirements. And so in terms of change, CSR can be implemented in two forms. The changes themselves could be socially responsible, so by maybe introducing biodegradable packaging, using more energy efficient, solar panels, resources, or the stakeholders should be treated ethically throughout the change process. It's kind of looking at those involved in the change. So maybe providing free counseling and support to employees and other stakeholders, open communication, all of that.